My name is Keith Lambert. I'm LEAP's Vice President of Business Attraction, also going to be your guide this afternoon as we walk through the application that MEDC put together, and also just kind of give you a sense of how to get there and where you should be directing prospective applicants that you're working with. I'm also going to be kind of co-anchoring this session, if you will, with Tony Willis. Tony, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Willis. I'm the Vice President of Entrepreneurship for LEAP, and we're looking forward to having a smooth webinar, right, Keith?
Absolutely. So, Tony, I'm going to be taking over the screen here, and if you want to kind of, just kind of walk through and narrate as I'm moving into the MEDC application and kind of going through our page, that would be great.
Sounds like a plan. All right, everyone. So right here is our purelansing.com. This is LEAP's homepage here. So if you go to purelansing.com, this will be what you see. And at the very top, you have our banner, which says Small Business Restart Application Open. Once you click on that banner, it tells you the application time frame from July 15th through August 5th. And then you click the Learn More and Apply. So at this point here, you're now in the relief and restart category for all activities, specifically to the restart grant itself. And then if you scroll down slightly here, you have a three-step process. You have step 1, 2, and 3. In step 1, this is the documents here that we tell all applicants to review, and it relates to not just the grant on a statewide, but also to the local level criteria. So this gives you a full understanding of how things will be scored, how much money has been awarded for our region, things to consider. So this is pretty much full transparency when it comes to the program and how it relates to the Lansing region that you're applying for. So that's step 1 for all applicants, is to review those documents. They're all PDFs and they open up quite easily on that. So next is step 2. With step 2, we have assistance for applicants. We point them to our local partners where they can work with to help them answer any questions they may have when it comes to crafting and filling out applications. We have a number of organizations we've contracted with, as well as all of you who are part of this call right now are all partners that are, will have some type of sort of engagement with the applicant, possibly being that they're your constituents, your people that you look after, neighbors, or business owners in your particular community or sector. So if you find a partner, it goes through a list of our contracted organizations right there in the Find a Partner green button. Then we'll click that green button, Keith. So this tells you from technical assistance, that's on the MEDCs. This is a statewide application. So that takes you when this first launched last Wednesday, there were a few errors with anything that launches. But so this was to direct them to that technical call center with any questions you may have came across. There's a number of 404 error screens, or things weren't loading, or they said this website's down for operations. Since then, that's pretty much been quiet, so that's good to hear. But if anybody does run into those issues, the number is available there, as well as the time frames when they're available to answer questions.
Don't call during lunch. But if you do call during lunch, you can leave a voicemail.
And they will call you back after lunch. So then you can have, this is ask a question on your right. That is, if you have a question after you're reading those documents and you're looking for, you say, okay, I'm either reading those documents, I have questions about what I just read, or I'm actually in the application itself and I wanted to ask a question directly. This section right here allows you to insert information and ask a question to us as LEAP directly. And Victoria, Debbie, and maybe Keith are the ones responding on this end of this segment of our website. And then beyond the application guide, which is previously noted in step 1, but it's a bit of redundancy to make sure they understand we're being as transparent as possible. Read the documents. It's all located right there. You also have our number of partners, which were mentioned below that, which were, Keith, you go back to find the partner one more time here. Thank you. Application help partners. All these organizations we worked with, are contracted with, to make sure that we are being deliberately intentional for a lot of communities, so they have access and they're aware of the grant opportunity to assist them during this COVID-19 pandemic. And so here are a list of the organizations right there they can reach out to directly for assistance with their application.
And we also have created, and this is a map that we created for the previous program that we administered in March through April, the Michigan Small Business Relief Program, not to be confused with the Restart Program. So this map we've updated, and depending on the geography across the Tri-County that you might be in, there's a local government partner or a downtown development authority or a local business chamber that wants to help you, very likely. So you can look at this resource map, and then as everyone has contact information listed. So get in touch with these folks. They're a great asset for you as well.
After doing step 1, 2, then 3 is actually the time to apply for the grant. And there's 2 areas here. One is for a business that is a for-profit entity, or a second is for a nonprofit applicants. And so the nonprofit application takes to a survey that gives us additional information so we can better understand your nonprofit as it relates to the grant criteria and mission. So if it depends on where you're at, you will fill out, if you're a business entity, a for-profit business entity, you would just go right to the business application piece, select that. Or if you're a nonprofit, you would select the nonprofit, which will take you to the application as well, but also a survey, additional survey with questions to help us better understand your nonprofit.
And the reason we built it this way is the statewide uniform application is really designed with a small business owner in mind. And we figured that, there were a lot of other things that we wanted to contemplate around awarding nonprofits across the Tri-County area grants. And a lot of it has to do with their mission and how their mission is helping people. And it wasn't so much about their revenue and that their likelihood to have higher revenue and higher employment in the future, like it very much is for businesses. But there was some other information. So we will actually go through that right now as a start to this. And this is actually built into LEAP's website. So whereas the statewide application, as you'll see momentarily, is through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, their website, the nonprofit Restart Grant Survey is built right into LEAP's website.
Correct. And it has the same features where you can save and continue later. It's 13 questions. It goes by pretty quick to fill out.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel McIlvaine. I'm an economic development specialist also with LEAP, working on the Restart program. What we wanted to do, as Keith kind of leads us through this nonprofit survey and then later the statewide application, was actually walk step by step through what it's going to look like so that you all can better assist applicants, and applicants can really frame up the strongest application possible. So as you'll see on the screen right now, there's a lot of very basic questions, nonprofit address, CEO, contact information, all of that is pretty standard and will just help identify your application.
Give myself a promotion.
And CEO for nonprofits is executive director.
Correct.
Correct. So now we're leading on to this page that has some free response questions. So this is really why we wanted to create an additional nonprofit survey, was to be able to hear more about nonprofit organizations and allow those nonprofits that are applying the opportunity to really share their story and demonstrate the impact that they have on our community. So as we're walking through, and we haven't done this for every question, but we wanted to include some examples of strong answers as if we were applying for LEAP. Just to clarify, LEAP will not be applying for this grant, but our example responses hopefully will serve to help other people create strong responses. So for this first question, please describe how your organization's mission connects to helping Tri-County residents in the wake of COVID-19. For nonprofits, this question is worth up to 5 points. And here is really where you want to state your organization's mission and then describe how it relates specifically to the Lansing region's recovery from COVID-19. So how does your organization support residents specifically of Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham counties? LEAP's answer, which is a little hard to see on the screen right now, it's a strong response because it clearly states LEAP's mission statement, as well as our direct objectives. And then we're stating that our service area is actually exactly the Tri-County region. And then we connect our work with business attraction and business retention to how that will affect COVID-19 recovery for small businesses and our region's general economic well-being. So then once you answer that question, now we want to know, how does your organization actually accomplish this mission? This question is really important. It's worth up to 10 points, and it's really the nonprofit's opportunity to dive further into what your organization does to accomplish its mission. Be as specific as possible in demonstrating your impact on the community. The main goal here is to give a lot of details about your organization's activities, and you can also explain how, if awarded, these grant funds would help enable your organization to build capacity and be even more impactful. So LEAP's answer is effective for this question because it's very specific and it speaks directly to how we accomplish our mission. We include information about our current programming, as well as investment numbers, exactly how many entrepreneurs we're helping. And you don't necessarily need to use a formal list like we did here. Whatever format works for your organization will work for us and for the reviewers. And further down in our answer, we also are able to include annual and overall impact statistics. If your organization has anything like this, that would be really great to include here. I pulled those numbers directly from an annual report. So you could find that kind of information helpful for your answer to this question.
And I think for all of these, as far as I know, there's no character cap. So generally speaking, the more the better. Tell your story here. And as we go through the application, you'll see that there's not all that many opportunities for kind of free response, tell your story type moments. And from our perspective in the criteria and the review process, those moments are really important for you to kind of expound upon the question and hit on some other things that relate to the question.
Absolutely. And that's why we wanted to provide a few examples of what a good free response answer could look like. A really important component of that question is also to include how you would use the funds if they could help your organization strengthen your community impact, especially with everything that's happening with COVID. As specific as you can be in that aspect of the question is beneficial as well. So next we ask how your organization is planning to expand or adjust its services in anticipation of the long-term effects of COVID-19. This is worth up to 5 points. And for this question, you'll really want to detail, again, keyword detail, how your organization is anticipating what your services will look like to deal with long-term COVID effects. The health and economic implications of this crisis could make nonprofit services even more important than they were before. So addressing here, how will COVID-19 affect your organization's work is really what we're getting at. So the next question asks, what % of your nonprofit's annual funding comes from government support or reimbursement? This is pretty pretty straightforward. You'll just want to put in a general percent of your annual funding that typically comes from government support. That could be grants, reimbursement, memberships, or other types of funding. Similarly, the next question about listing your funding sources is also straightforward. You would want to list what has been secured for this year as well as for next fiscal year in that box.
Just as a note, it was asking me to enter a percent, but it didn't want a percent sign. So for that question, you're just putting an actual digit number into it.
So the next question is a select all that apply. You'll want to select any and all boxes that you feel your nonprofit's mission fits into. If it doesn't fit into one of these boxes, that's totally okay. You're still eligible. Those are just priority fields. In that case, you would want to check other and then type in what your nonprofit would identify with. Another straightforward question after that, does 51% or more of your nonprofit's board identify as one or more of the following: minority, women, veterans, or persons with disabilities? So if majority of your board identifies with one or more of those traits, then you would click yes. If not, no. And then lastly, what geographic areas does your organization serve? There are no points associated with this, but it will still be really important context for reviewers. So here, be really specific about what geographic area your nonprofit is serving. Where are your services provided? Where are your members or clients located? This could be a municipality, a county, multiple counties, all the way up to a national or international organization and client base. Just be specific. And finally, for this survey, we're asking for proof of your organization's nonprofit status. So this could be your IRS 501c determination letter, a current license to solicit funds in the state of Michigan, or other similar document just proving your tax exempt status. As Keith hits next, I think it's important to note there's also the save and continue later function in this survey. So that's something we'll see in the statewide application as well. But you can always start and then return to this nonprofit survey section as well.
We'll go ahead and hit submit survey here. And then you see it takes you right over to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's website. And this is their landing page for the Restart program. And as you scroll down, just to be crystal clear again with the movement from one thing to another, from LEAP's page, that was what would happen if you were a nonprofit applying. In the step 3 here, if you click on the business application button within LEAP's link, it will take you directly to that same exact spot. So essentially your nonprofit applicants are going through this additional first step, taking the survey right on LEAP's website, and then they're getting funneled to the exact same place as the typical business applicants. So the key thing here, again, you can look through the information. We do think in general, I don't know that we hit upon it enough, but and Tony talked through the criteria and the listing of the partners who are there to help applicants. We really think that's first and foremost the best landing page for every prospective business and nonprofit out there in the Lansing Tri-County area that's looking at applying for these funds. They can get an understanding of how the review and the criteria will look, what the key factors are, they can get that technical assistance and help. They can ask our organization direct questions if they're confused at any part. And then, of course, the application being hosted by the MEDC, they get there through our process. So we think it's a better, a better process to have them start there rather than right at the MEDC's website. But that is where the application lives. So this blue button here, Apply Now, takes you over to the Pure Michigan Business Connect space, which is where they have all of their forms with the MEDC. And here, as I scroll down, you can see the details associated with the program, which were articulated on the previous page and similar to the content in LEAP's page. It's directing us to go up here to the Forms tab. Once we click into that, again, additional background information. And as Victoria mentioned, this is not the place for you if you're an applicant outside of the Tri-County area, or a partner or an economic development organization from another region. But if you are, you can go to this link and find the organization like LEAP in some other part of the state of Michigan that is administering these funds. There's one for every single county, whether you're in the UP or in Southeast Michigan or in Traverse City area, wherever you are, there's a group that is like LEAP that is administering these dollars, and you can find them there. It also gives you the same information that was on LEAP's website about where you can actually call in if you have a technical issue with your application. We're hoping that we won't have any on this this live walkthrough here, but that is potentially something that can come up, knowing that a lot of people are applying for these. As of Friday, we knew there were already about 10,000 applications across the state, so it's definitely a load on any web server to take on this number of applications. So we click the Start button here at the bottom. And then that takes me to, again, a description about what the program's all about, the same information about how I can call in if I have an issue. I'm going to enter my email here, and they'll see if I'm already in their database. It's then telling me that an account has been found because I've played around in this before. So if not, you would go through the process of creating an account, which is a pretty quick and simple. I think there is an email confirmation process. But it is, again, a pretty simple standard process that you would go through to create an account. And then, again, that is also how you have access to log back in and find your application to either change something you submitted or work on it later. So as I click Continue there, it associates with my username and my account. And then I need to find or add my company. And similarly, when I type in Lansing Economic Area Partnership, it comes up because Lansing Economic Area Partnership, LEAP, is already listed in their database. So you saw there, there was also the option, I'm going to have to refresh this. There was also the option to add a company. So if you don't see your company there, you would search whatever the name of your organization is, and then you would click Add, and you would go through the process of adding the company to the database and having it be associated with your username. Once you have your organization, your business, or your nonprofit listed, you'll go ahead and put in your address. Then you click Request to Join Company. And once you've requested to join the company, this is actually where you're getting into the application. So once you see the instructions information, you'll see that you actually have access to the application form. So those are the three things you have to do up front: log into an account, find your company or add your company to a listing, and then add your location, the physical address of that business or nonprofit. The instructions speak to the eligibility, which again, we'll see it was on both LEAP's website and the MEDC's website, as well as listed right here. And you'll see the questions are in many ways based upon this information, so I won't belabor the point here. One key thing to note here is that it talks about an applicant business certification form. And what that essentially is a document. I will show you what it looks like here. It is a document that every applicant must sign, and it's in the format of a fillable PDF form. So you just go through and fill out all the different information fields. It's pretty quick to provide your employer ID number, your business phone number, contact information. If you have if you're a doing business as or a trade organization, you put your name there. And one of the key things here is that there are terms and a liability waiver associated with applying for a grant, essentially saying that you will not file a lawsuit against LEAP or the Michigan Economic Development Corporation or the Michigan Strategic Fund, the entities that are authorized to administer these funds. So that's an important thing to go through and provide a signature. And in the best way, I think, to do that, and I know we've had some questions about this piece, you can go through, depending on what you use to edit PDFs, you can either add in a picture of your signature, or you can go through an e-signature process like Adobe Acrobat, and I think Adobe Reader also offers that. But just depending on what you or your client are using to fill out the application, you'll want to get this signed and then fill out all the fillable pieces. At this time, even though it is a part of the fillable application, the local economic development corporation is not taking any action on this. So you would just fill out your box outside of this bottom section, fill that out and save it on your computer, and then you will reference it again later in the application.
And Keith, on that application, at the very top, there's a section where they want you to state your region that you're applying for on the very top of the that certification form, I believe. Also.
Sure.
It's kind of hidden there right underneath the
title.
title.
Yeah, the very first thing. Good call. Yeah. So this here you would put LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. If I could spell, that would help. So there you go. So that is a very important thing. That's where you're stating the region that you're associated with for the Restart program. Thank you, Tony.
Absolutely.
So that's a key element. You'll want to have applicants work through that and make sure to save it on their computer in a place that they can readily access it later on. And basically, that's one of the last things they fill out before submitting the whole application. Similarly, another attachment type question is around a W-9 form. A lot of businesses will already have, or nonprofits will already have a recent W-9 filled out, but in case you don't, you can download the blank form very easily. It's hyperlinked there. Pull up that, again, in the format of a fillable PDF form. So you can go through and provide your employer identification number or a social security number if you don't have an EIN. And that's another document that you'll be required to submit before completing the application.
And just like the document, the certification form document, you would also need to add through Adobe Reader, Acrobat, your signature to the W-9 as well. It's further down the second page there, or first page, apologies, right in the middle of the first page. Scroll up just a little bit more, Keith, right there under certification, part 2, and that's where you add your signature and date. Those areas, unfortunately, are not fillable, but to apply those using the same method that you did on the previous document, that'd be perfect. And so Keith, I'll jump in here. I know we take turns as we, yeah. And so after you save those forms, you know, save them to your desktop or folder so you can easily access them later, because at the very end, you need to upload those forms when the person submit. Here's some more information, definitions about the underrepresented categories, what they mean. Minority owned, so if you think people of color, they go down the list of what that is, and it's 51% or more to have that business certified as a minority owned or person of color business. Women owned and veteran owned, the exact same methodology applies, 51% or greater. Application instructions, more of the detail, and this is the good part here to mention that this application is open until August 5th. It states that you can hear, so there is no rush right away. So if we want to take their time, and just like on the previous one, you can submit, and you can, because you have created a profile, you can come back here and make edits all the way until 11:59 p.m. on August 5th. But we recommend, you know, probably not wait till the last minute like that, but you have plenty of time to fill out and look at your answers before it's due. So there's no rush of urgency. It's not a first come, first served basis. Moving down here is more FAQs, talks about the DocuSign, other things you can use to help sign the forms. You get the email confirmation after submitting the form, so you will know that if your form has been successfully submitted and received by the MEDC. Moving down to the blue section here, this is additional information. They grabbed information earlier about your profile. This is more information directly towards the business that you're applying for. So this would be LEAP, will be our business entity. We do not have a DBA. I guess LEAP would be our DBA instead of the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. Then here, there's two options here. If you have a EIN, that is the preferred one, but if you don't, you can also input your tax identification number on the top. But EIN is the preferred methodology to apply your business for. If you are so
notice there as well with Tony's point that the EIN is a required field.
Yes,
as listed, whereas the tax ID number is not. So for everyone that is able, the preference is to fill out the EIN, and then that precludes you from having to fill out the tax identification number as well as the social security number that is requested later on, which is also optional.
Correct. And if you don't have a EIN, you would fill out your social security number just like you fill out in your W-9 form, because that most likely you're a sole proprietor in that level. So you would fill out your social security number in those fields. Moving forward, just more information, your basic contact information, email, name, how to get contact with you. Nothing tricky at all in this part here.
And this is important for any applicants that might be filing on behalf of their owner as a business. I myself am not the CEO of LEAP. I'm just doing this kind of as a demo. But it is important, like if for example, a manager might be filing on behalf of a restaurant owner, for instance, that it is important to have the business owner's details here rather than the actual person applying and filling out the application. So that's an important distinction, because a lot of the understanding, and we have a mandate to have at least 30% of the funds go towards underrepresented groups, and that is defined by owner characteristics rather than who's actually applying for the grant.
Good clarification there, Keith. Here you talk about the SSN or EIN as provided above. We discussed that earlier. So this will be where you can additionally apply that information right there. And here comes regarding eligibility. So there's 5 questions in this eligibility section here. The first is if you have received previous funds from the relief effort, which took place in April. So you would select on where did you receive those funds from, which one of these EDOs you received those funds from. And so if you received funds from the relief grants in April, that would have been the amount of $10,000. So you would select LEAP and $10,000. But if you were another area, you could have applied somewhere else as well. I guess you would select the other communities as well and the amounts they awarded for their EDOs, for their regions as well. And then none, you don't have to, since only 60 individuals were awarded funds the last round, there's a majority that will not select this button, so they'll put none, which doesn't affect anyway for that part there. Next up is, and the rest of these questions here, you have to answer yes on, because these are really saying that your business has been negatively affected by COVID-19 or has to adjust because of COVID-19. These are making sure that qualifying if you are eligible for this program.
Right, these are all base eligibility questions.
All base eligibility. So if you answer no on any of these, Keith, I believe it gives a red notice or a note maybe, correct?
Yeah, I think for these ones, I don't know, I haven't actually hit submit with no as one of these, but I think it tells you that there's a different message that you're not eligible for the grant opportunity.
When you select no right now, Keith, does it bring up, okay, no, it is not. Okay, so I thought it brought up.
I don't think it does it until you hit submit. But.
Okay. So you make sure they answer, honestly, but, exact same eligibility that was mentioned through multiple times here, who's eligible for these funds. And this is them just now certifying they're answering yes. Even on that certification form that they had to fill out, that fillable PDF, the exact same information was being asked. It's another level of redundancy to make sure people understand who is really eligible and who will receive these funds.
And that is a good point. Within that form, there is language that talks about you verifying that, these are the honest truth and accurate to the best of your ability, the best of your knowledge. So just I guess a simple expectation. But obviously, if the answer is no, that just means you're not eligible for this program.
Correct.
One thing that's important to note here, and there's two separate questions later on, but the 50 or fewer employees, that employees right here is defined as all full-time employees, as well as all part-time employees, as well as all 1099 contractors. So essentially, it's all workers rather than employees. It's anyone that is consistently on the payroll in any format, essentially, is counted towards this 50 number here. And it's both at the date of March 16th as well as the date of application.
Correct. And I saw a question popped up. I want to answer that while it's in this eligibility section. Please note that you're not disqualified if you received other monies from other programs, as in there were other grants from different municipalities that were providing assistance for those that were impacted by COVID-19. Initially, when this Restart program was launched, any previous recipient of funds were not allowed to move forward. So that was only with the relief fund. So if you receive money from the city of Lansing's program, that's totally fine. You're not disqualified. If you receive money from East Lansing's relief program, totally fine. You're not disqualified. So just make sure you're clear. Those other programs do not impact your eligibility for this Restart program.
And yeah, and the same applies to federal dollars, whether it's SBA loans or the new COVID-related PPP or the emergency disaster loan or other monies from the state level, whether it's Match on Main or the Michigan Small Business Relief Program grants or loans. There is no program out there that you could have applied for, and that's something that changed, at least in terms of the Michigan Small Business Relief Program. Formerly, grantees were ineligible, but now even the ones that have received grants before are still eligible for this program. So that's an important thing, that if you're working with applicants or if you're a potential applicant yourself, receiving funds from the state, local, or federal level even in the past does not disqualify you from this program.
So as long as you meet those other eligibility criteria, under 50 employees, been negatively impacted or can have to modify, the answer is apply, apply, apply.
Yes, yes, yes.
There you go. So moving forward here, this is getting to the more detailed information about who the applicant is and the ownership structure. So you can select as many that determine your race or ethnicity. You select all 5 you want there, or no, that's okay too. They're all fine. When it says Asian American, I would say that includes Pacific Islander. I would say that's encompasses in that area. They have Hawaiians and Native American in the above area, which is rightfully so. But I just make sure that when we look at what you determine in that realm, that will fall under the Asian American category. Moving down here, women-owned, it's a simple yes or no answer. Veteran-owned as well, yes or no. What is the business nonprofit physical address? Perfect there. The city where the nonprofit is located. County. And then, basic mailing information and location here. Does the business nonprofit have multiple locations? So if you click yes, you'll enter the address of the other locations. So there's actually, so if you have operations in No, we're just one here, one Main Street. Okay, I see, Keith. You just input where they're located at for further clarification, because as we go down the line, you'll see why. And if the owner has multiple businesses, so if the owner owns not just this one business he's applying for, or that she's applying for, they would also detail and give information about what those other businesses or nonprofits are in this section as well. And this business is a franchise. So there are three options here: locally owned and operated, majority owned and operated by individual. So majority owned is that, now these last two are more tricky on our ends. We've had different variations of this form here, but as we know, locally owned and operated, somebody buys into a franchise. Majority owned by individuals, that you can go in a partnership agreement with a franchise. You don't have to own the full outright of that business itself in that location. You can have enough, 60% or 54% ownership, and the actual corporation can own the remaining piece, or a variation of the corporation, another partner could own pieces of that franchise together. And I think that's where that is detailed there. And then majority owned by a group is where a number of folks have a collective, or like an LLC, can own into that franchise, or a variety of groups can own into a single franchise.
Rachel, can you speak to the criteria elements associated with this?
Yeah, so for this franchise question, we recognize that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for our nonprofit applicants. They would probably simply select no, and that's okay. There's no points associated with it for nonprofits. For businesses, this question is worth up to 5 points. If your business is not a franchise and you select no, then that's worth 5 points. However, if your business is a franchise and you select that you are locally owned and operated, that is also worth 3 points. So be sure to select that answer if you're locally owned and operated, and that would again mean that the majority of your ownership lives in the Lansing 3-county region of Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham counties.
Thanks, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moving forward, how many employees does your business or nonprofit have as of March 16th, 2020? What is the current number of employees? How many employees do you retain as a result of the funding from this grant?
And again, with the number of employees, when they use this word, this is full-time, part-time, contractor, kind of the whole gamut, and this number needs to be under 50. Both of these numbers need to be under 50 in order to be eligible.
Spot on. And as a result, how many employees will be hired as a result of the funding from this grant? And hired are employees that you're bringing back on to work as well. So if you had a furlough individuals or layoff, those individuals coming back on will be considered hired again for that category.
So I just changed this to show that back in March, we had 14 employees. Today we have 13. Let's say one was furloughed or temporarily laid off. We're going to say we're bringing that person back because we're hoping to receive a $10,000 grant through this program, just as one example. So really it's, if it's true job creation, that works too, a brand new hire. But if it's also bringing someone back, we know a lot of people are in some sort of temporary layoff or furlough situation. So we're considering that job creation as it pertains to this question.
And so Keith, this is another important note here, the average salary or hourly wage for current employees. And this does take an effect of the owner's salary as well, Keith, or does not?
Rachel, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, for this question, we're asking applicants to state the average wage or salary for their employees, and we are asking to exclude the business owner's compensation in this number.
So that's an important thing to think about.
Yes.
And it does say salary or wage. I think it's probably preferable. I guess we're going to get both formats either way, but I'd say we probably want to standardize it to one or the other. But yeah, that's an important caveat so whatever the business owner's compensation is would not be factored in, and then whatever their hourly average for the rest of the employees, that's what the answer would be.
Yeah. And as it says there, I guess it's on, we can't dictate how they fill out, whether it's, the annual amount or the hourly rate, but we'll be able to break it down once we receive it on the review process. Does the business nonprofit sell products or services physically in person? You can select no or yes, either way there. This kind of indicates how COVID has impacted. If you were more in the realm that we're dealing really face-to-face, or your service business that have to go into other people's homes or houses or repair or stuff like that in crowded areas, COVID has definitely probably impacted you more than the latter.
Rachel, tell us about this question, because I know this is an important one in terms of kind of answering beyond just what the question's asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you may have noticed, there are very few true free response questions on the statewide application. So those opportunities that business applicants do get, they're really important. So this question is worth up to 5 points for both businesses and nonprofits. If you answer yes, you have the opportunity for a free response question. You'll want to describe here what adjustments your organization has made to COVID in order to continue to be viable. So, for example, did your business alter manufacturing processes to produce PPE is a really classic example. Or are you expanding your online presence to continue to remain visible, or offering outdoor seating for if you're a restaurant? Has your nonprofit shifted its one-on-one services that used to be in person to over video chat now? You just want to be very specific about how your organization has innovated to adapt to the situation caused by COVID-19 and how you are able to remain relevant. So for LEAP, a big part of our story would be that we have pivoted to address the new needs that have come up from businesses in our area. As Keith's typing out, this includes a PPE purchasing for employees and helping facilitate donations for our local health system. Another thing that LEAP in particular could speak to here is that we have been heavily involved in grant facilitation through the state, and with this program as well with CARES Act dollars. And although that doesn't necessarily bring in funding that will ensure LEAP is financially viable into the future, our funding comes from memberships. And so we are always striving to show why it's good to invest in LEAP and how we are impactful for this region. And so as the region's needs have changed, we have shifted likewise what our services are to remain vital and relevant in the eyes of our members and helpful for our community. So the key here, as with all other free response question, is just to be as specific as possible and even go beyond a little bit potentially what the question's asking, and demonstrating how your organization is thinking about maintaining its relevancy in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, get detailed, provide numbers where you can, similar to how the nonprofit is acting on their mission. Essentially, this is really an opportunity for the applicant to go further, as Rachel said, and give a lot more information about what COVID's meant to them and how they've pivoted, how they've come up with solutions, how they've been creative to keep their operations running and keep servicing their customers, clients, employees, visitors, whatever it might be.
And as Rachel mentioned, this is one of the few sections where there's that narrative piece where there's you can go into detail. I think out of this entire application, there might be 3 questions that allow you to further explain and give create more of a story and more detail of how and what your business is. It's a better opportunity to have your business shine in the application process. So take advantage of it. And it's, you know, you don't want to write a novel per se, but you definitely don't want to skimp on details that are important, and do yourself justice and highlight your successes and what you've done and how you pivot to adjust to COVID-19.
This next question is similarly important, and Rachel can go through kind of what it means from a criteria and review points perspective. But each one that you select, you're going to be asked to describe. So depending on if the answer is yes, and you know the client or the applicant works with a lot of these different groups, they're going to have a free response associated with each one of those.
Yeah, so speaking of letting your business shine, this is probably the most important question for that. This question is worth up to 5 points for nonprofits and up to 15 points for businesses. So this is particularly important for business applicants to really spend a lot of attention on this question. It's the main way that we're able to allocate points for the Love Lansing Community Impact Review section. So like Keith said, you can select all that apply. Selecting one or more of those groups does not necessarily impact your score, whether you select 1 or select 4. It's more going to be in the quality of the programming that you provide and what types of details you're able to provide to demonstrate your organization's impact in the community. The nonprofit survey allows us to get more information about nonprofits, but for businesses, this is really the most relevant and important question for that very important category. Again, just be very specific about how exactly your organization positively impacts the groups that you select. Another really important note for this question, if you are a business owner or a nonprofit executive that identifies as a person with a disability, we ask that you please check that persons with disabilities box on this question and indicate that you identify as a person with a disability, or rather the business owner does, in that free response answer section. So for LEAP, LEAP would probably select 2 boxes here, that economically disadvantaged box, and then also there's a box for small businesses with less than 50 employees. So we would want to give really detailed descriptions for each of those boxes.
And this one's a little bit tricky because the box itself only has 1 line. So you can see it ends up being very long, but it still doesn't have a character limit. So I would encourage people to, you know, put a good amount of content in here. Again, not write a novel, but a good paragraph about, you know, how they're really engaging with that specific group in their hiring practices or in their, you know, community service or community engagement, philanthropic, you know, targeted efforts to, you know, to sell products or services, whatever it might be, you know, tell the story there, because that's going to be an important piece.
Yeah, and so because this is such an important question and it's a little hard to see the text, I think I'll actually read just one of LEAP's responses, our examples, for that economically disadvantaged box, because it really does demonstrate what type of detail would be ideal for an applicant to be able to provide.
Yeah,
of course, in LEAP's case, we're talking about programming that we're putting on for businesses that might focus more on hiring. It might focus more on what types of community events you're participating in, what types of products or services are you offering, who's your main clientele. All of that kind of information could go into one of these responses. But for LEAP, we specifically are talking about our new One and All program. And so the answer reads, LEAP's One and All program is designed to increase successful entrepreneurship and small business ownership among underrepresented populations, including people of color, women, persons with disabilities, immigrants, military veterans, or racial and ethnic minority groups, refugees, and returning citizens across Clinton, Eaton, Ingham, and Shiawassee counties, who all fall below the ALICE threshold, which is commonly known as the working poor. Over the next 2 years, One and All will offer 60 entrepreneurs a unique combination of business and communication training, coaching, mentoring, and $2,500 in seed money in a 2-month program. So that answer really provides details about how we are impacting that specific population, economically distressed, what is the program, how much funding is provided through the program, how long is it, that type of very specific detail. If you have it, we want to hear it in this question.
Spot on. So moving forward, some more simple questions here regarding, length of being in business. Please list other relief funding amounts received from state, local. So this could be any of those programs. Does not disqualify at all, but it gives more context of how many resources, how active you were in that space getting resources, how successful you were getting those resources. So it's just more contextual piece. So please insert that in there.
Yeah, and for that one, another thing you can do, if you did receive PPP or a city level relief grant or anything like that, please list the program name as well as the amount. And then also, if the answer is none, you can go beyond that and say, I applied for this but did not receive. And that sort of information is useful for us here as well, just to provide a little bit more context. If you've been going after funds and just haven't been successful, that's something you could also provide here.
Yeah, spot on, Keith. I think that none and giving reasons why, that's be great to have understanding. So question about rent. Now, please note that if you're a sole proprietor and if this was your home-based business, you would not put your entire mortgage or your apartment rent in that category. You would hopefully allocate the space of your business activities in your dwellings and appropriate that amount to the amount that you pay in there. So just like you do with your tax filings, you would say, I use, 600 square feet of my home for business purposes. And that percentage should be allocated in that amount. So we do have some home-based businesses or some proprietors applying here. So that's something to be allocated, or to be noted on how you detail your actual cost.
That'd be a heck of a home office, Tony. Good for you.
Yeah, it's not me. Let's see here. So this is the revenue. Which is a great question here to determine. We want pretty much a year over year. So a calendar year. What was your revenue for last year in 2019? So inserting LEAP's amount that way. And then you'll see the percentage of loss since March 1st of this year. This really shows how much, if COVID has impacted your business and sales during this time. We know that some revenue could be deferred revenue that could be coming later on, that some of your clients or customers might have to pay at that point in time because what happened. But that's okay. I would still consider that as a loss at this point in time because that's unknown. We know that if you had money coming in at that point in time and it's not in at that point right now, I'll consider that as a loss.
Yeah, and then one good thing to point out here is that, there's an impact and it's challenging. We talked to the MEDC about this because some businesses have actually experienced additional revenue, but they're having different issues due to COVID. And there's not really a way to answer this because it specifically says revenue loss. But generally what we recommend doing is taking a look at one period in 2019 and then looking at the same period in 2020 that's in COVID times. So as an example, looking at, I think ideally it would be the books from March through June of 2019, and then looking through that exact same period for 2020. That's about as apples to apples as you can possibly get. yeah, you're going to come out with, one number here, one number here. You just look at the percentage difference, and then that's your answer to this question. We were hoping that they'd be a little bit more specific, so each applicant will be answering exactly the same thing. But so that's what we would suggest people do. If that's too challenging, you could also just look at a singular month, perhaps April, since that was, for many businesses, that was the least active full month of operations this past year. So you could look at April 2019 versus April 2020 and take the percent difference. This is a really important question, but I know, just based on the way it's written, we're probably not going to have a whole lot of consistency across responses. So just kind of take that into account, but we do recommend that kind of apples to apples approach.
And as you see, there's space for you to fill out that, as Keith mentioned, in a way that can really show the change in revenue year over year. So what capacity your business is running at? There's 4 options for this one on the drop down, whether it's 100%, 75%, 50, or none, or 25 to none. Select what that means to you. Now 25% closed, those are different. You can still be running very minimally, but just be aware of what you're putting in there. What do you think of your overarching output? How's that changed since the COVID-19 has happened? This is another great question here that allows more narrative. This next one, does the business / nonprofit use local vendors or suppliers? So click yes, it says please explain. This is another great area to showcase how your business is connected into the overall fabric of the Lansing economy and experience by using those other local vendors in our region. So imagine if you were, Keith already has our populated answer there, but imagine if you were a restaurant or a cleaning service, or, it could be a healthcare profession, like a dental office. What other resources are you using from our region for your business? And so whether if you're a restaurant, you can be using other local vendors for your meat, for cleaning products, for those type of things. How do you make this connected to the overall Lansing experience and economy? So don't skip on narrative. We received, and I guess you can put, and let's, another clarification here, if it's more of a local individual business, that's even better, because we know there are some that we have answers that if I'm a restaurant and I am buying X amount of my goods from Costco, which is okay, Costco is in our region, but it's not necessarily a local business. It's not a locally owned business in our region. It's something that's to be noted, the level of where you're using your supplies. It doesn't affect you, but it's a better way to showcase if you're using something from a truly locally owned business, highlight that here. But you can list all those vendors, Costco, Gordon Food Services, X, Y, and Z. They're here in our region, but they're really locally owned. Be sure to note those clearly in the section. So this is your primary industry that you're in. Tons of options. I think there's maybe 14.
Yeah, there's about 15 options. There's also an other, in case you look through all of these and you say, none of these are really what I do. There's an other, and if you click on other, you'll have a fill-in. Please explain, and then you can tell more about what exactly it is. For example, we noticed that like private sector, either private sector school or education consulting type groups are not really well represented on here. So you could select other and fill that out. This is an important one too for nonprofits. Make sure you select nonprofit here, because this will also be a trigger for someone that may have not seen LEAP's website on the front end of their experience and they went straight to the state application. This would be one of the triggers that would make us know that, okay, this applicant is a nonprofit. They need to also complete our nonprofit survey. And then we would be communicating to make sure that they are doing that before the end of the application period.
And then this one details all the different type of filings you can be, our entity types for your business. Going below, for nonprofits, it's any nonprofit designation. And so people are, are familiar with like a 501c3, but there's actually like 28 different types of 501c categories, 1 through 28, I believe. So if you're not a 501c3 or C6 or religious, what the most commonly used, you can list those other ones in here and go in further detail as well.
It's also important to note, so LEAP, for example, is a 501c3, so we select that. Another thing that happens when you select nonprofit as your business or nonprofit type is that this question pops up, asking you to describe your nonprofit mission. And Rachel, do you want to speak to this and kind of the difference between this versus what was already asked in the survey for nonprofits?
Yeah, so this question looks and feels very similar to the first question on the nonprofit survey that asked specifically about your nonprofit's mission and how you impact the Tri-County region. So this question is just a little bit broader than the one previously asked. Your answers might be very similar to the two, and that's totally okay. There are not points directly associated with this for nonprofits. What it's going to do is just provide reviewers with more context and just a little bit more background about your organization.
Thanks, Rachel. So the next question gets into, if you're awarded the grant, how are you going to be spending those funds? And you can, as it notes, select all that apply. And then with each you do select, you'll have an opportunity to describe how you would use those funds with a little bit of a narrative, and then also provide the amount. So for instance, the way that LEAP and our partners have decided to categorize the funds, a nonprofit will be requesting $10,000. A micro business with 1 to 9 employees would be requesting $10,000. And a traditional small business of 10 to 50 employees would be requesting $20,000. So with that thinking in mind, you could go through here and say, okay, as a business with 20 employees, we're going to have $20,000 to spend. I want to spend it on, these 3 different items, and then provide that breakdown. So ideally, it would add up to the amount you expect to receive, and then you'd be describing how, if rewarded with the $20,000 grant, how you would break up those funds and use them to support your business and make sure it can, keep people employed and also make you, stronger moving forward through this pandemic. So I'm just going to say we're spending, as a nonprofit, if we were to get $10,000 in funds, I'm saying we're spending it all on payroll. Then I would also want to include a narrative about what that means, perhaps covering 2 months of 50% salaries, or provide a little detail there. And similarly to the next question, this is asking you the grant funding requested. Theoretically, an applicant can fill in whatever amount they want. In our region, we are, as I mentioned, we kind of have these 3 different categories. So rather than have an applicant request what might become kind of an arbitrary number, anywhere between $1 and I guess a minimum of something, but anything up to $20,000, we're just breaking it down where, larger traditional small businesses are requesting $20,000, nonprofits and micro businesses are requesting $10,000. It makes our life a little bit easier on the administrative front, but we also think that there's just a need for a certain sense of kind of equality across the board for different types of businesses. So that's the overall approach. So whether they might put in here $5,000, it won't matter what they're requesting. They will receive funds per the category that they fit into, either based on their employment number or if they're a nonprofit or a business. Tony, do you want to talk through how do you actually submit the uploaded documents?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we said on the onset of this process here, those 2 documents. The one, the certification form, which you would then press upload files. you would select that file. Hopefully you save it somewhere easily accessible. Then you go down to the W-9 form and repeat that process with the W-9 form itself. Please note that they mentioned earlier about the DocuSign, whether it's Adobe or other things, to make sure you put your actual signature on those documents. So follow through with that. That's an important step there. They won't be received or accepted without the proper signature on those. Then once you have those documents uploaded, you fill out all the questions, you are now ready to hit the big button that says submit. This is the moment of truth. And so
we'll see if I did everything okay.
That's right, Keith. Let's see here.
Actually, I want to show them what happens when you don't. So I want to go back and make sure that I have something wrong. Maybe I'll just not fill out a question somewhere. I will not provide my EIN. So when you submit, when there's an error, it's going to take you to this screen and let you know with the red box that a certain thing was wrong. I was lucky. That was the only thing I messed up. It was a pretty good run through. So in the EIN, because it's a required field, I do need to go back down to that. Unfortunately, it doesn't call it out for you. It just tells you up here. So you'll have to have applicants focus on what the error is and go and find that question. It doesn't really highlight it in any other way as you're kind of scrolling through. So just a little bit more of a careful eye and we'll find
right there
the EIN. So in some other forms, the question itself would be highlighted or bolded or in red or something like that. And again, it doesn't even have to be in the EIN. I can just put the number 1 and then it's a number and then the form will allow me to hit submit down at the bottom. So now that we've corrected for that, we hit submit. And now it's telling me there's 2 more errors.
Answer.
So they have a problem with the form that I uploaded. Now this is an error that I've heard from a few people that they had issues because even though I upload a document, it's asking me that it's telling me that an answer is required. So if I scroll back down to that, look at the certification. It's not really a clear thing to do here. Tony, have you run into this issue?
I have not. Now, Keith, I know that the files that we are submitting are not the files because I think you're going past the limit of space. I think
it's too big.
If that was what do you think? Governor Whitmer's restart plan? That's a pretty big document. That was the different phases and the graphics on that document. That could be the cause of that.
It looks like it's under a megabyte, but well, let me try. I'll just put in something different. It doesn't have to be a certain file type, I don't think.
I spoke to someone who had this error yesterday, I believe, or
I had it when I tried
over the weekend,
last week.
so Sunday.
Yeah.
But he was able to finally just delete and re-upload, and then eventually it did work.
Okay, but let's give it another try here with a couple pictures uploaded. Ah, there you go. Like pictures instead. Okay. So this is the page you should see if you get through the application successfully. You'll see they give you a confirmation number, which is good to kind of keep in mind. You could write it down if that helps you. But this confirmation page does mean that you've successfully submitted an application for the Restart program in anywhere in the state, I guess, but with LEAP and through our process in the Lansing Tri-County area. They do reference this additional information, which is where if an applicant went straight to the state's website, this is where they might be able to find out more information about LEAP, the local reviewer and administrator of the funds in the Lansing area. Similarly, if they have any questions, they're going to be able to send an email there. So it also talks about the reviewing and editing process, and that will go right up till midnight on 11:59 on August 5th on Wednesday. So you have all that time to go back in, and we're going to be continuing to communicate with all the applicants and let them know that, and encourage them to look at the criteria and look at the review process and understand how things will be scored. And we want to be very transparent with all of that to help give everyone a good fighting chance to write a really compelling application and receive some grant funds. So that's kind of the goal here, and people can go back in and edit. So especially for our DEI and our local partners on the phone, we'd really encourage people to go back into their application and not just spend a half an hour on this here in the first week, click submit, and then be done with it. If they want to have the best chance of receiving the funds, it really is worth their time looking into the criteria, working with partners, calling up some people and talking through their application questions and answers, and going through all of that. So I think I also, because I filled this out, I also get this email confirmation, and that's another method by which I can go in and edit the submission. So maybe I just remembered that I actually, in my EIN, I just put 1 digit instead of my actual EIN, and that's gonna not be good. So I can go to edit submission, and then it tells me I need to sign in or sign up. So again, since we've already logged in, everyone at this point should be able to just sign in. Luckily, it knows who I am. So I go back into my application, signed in successfully, and then there I am right back in with all my answers already pre-filled exactly the way I had submitted them before. So I can go back into this and say, okay, that I need to give it an actual number here, make sure I can correct that. Or I want to add to a narrative, I want to upload a different type of document or a different form. Whatever you want to do in your document, you can get right back in and do that, and then go right back down. Everything's there, the uploaded files are still there, so you're still good to go, and then just resubmit. Except there's an error. Okay, so now it's not liking my forms again. Okay, so I think there's a little bit of quirkiness around the forms, it seems. I know a number of people that have worked with applicants have had this issue. I've had this issue now 3 times. So I think we might just encourage people to go back in and re-upload. It doesn't seem to have a problem with the type of files or necessarily even the size of the files, although they do have the max. But most PDFs or Word docs or picture files are going to be under the 10. So there you go. I just had to resubmit the same document. So I just keep in mind that might be a little technical glitch that you could come across, and encourage people to resubmit the same file, and it should work just fine. And then they're back to their confirmation page, and they've successfully, hopefully, reviewed and edited, and they've put together the best application they possibly can, and that will be what we will end up reviewing.